Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The roses were his favorite, deep red, freshly cut, still wrapped in the brown paper from the florist on Fifth. I'd been planning this for weeks. A quiet Tuesday. No special occasion. Just me, deciding that maybe we needed a reminder of who we used to be to each other. I left the office 2 hours early, told my manager it was a migraine. It wasn't entirely a lie. Something had been pressing behind my eyes for months. A low, dull ache I kept blaming on stress, on long hours, on the fluorescent lights above my desk. But standing in that elevator, watching the lobby numbers count down, I think some part of me already knew. Our apartment was on the 14th floor. Daniel and I had lived there for 3 years, long enough for the hallway to feel like muscle memory. I knew exactly which floorboard creaked near the kitchen. I knew the sound the radiator made at 6 p.m. I knew his sounds. His footsteps. His laugh. The particular way he hummed when he thought no one was listening. So when I pressed my key into the lock and heard music, soft, low, something jazzy, I smiled. He was home early too. Maybe the universe was conspiring with me after all. But then I heard her laugh. Light. Effortless. Comfortable in a way that doesn't belong to a stranger. I pushed the door open slowly. The roses were still in my hand. The apartment smelled like my perfume, the one I keep on the bathroom shelf, and something was cooking on the stove. Something I hadn't cooked. The throw blanket from our bedroom was draped over the couch. Her shoes, small, tan, strappy, were lined up neatly by the door. Right next to his. She was standing in my kitchen, barefoot, stirring something in my favorite pot, wearing one of Daniel's oversized shirts like she belonged there. She didn't hear me come in. But Daniel did. He turned. And in the half-second before he spoke, before the words, before the excuses, before everything unraveled, I saw it on his face. He wasn't surprised to see her. He was surprised to see me. His name came out of my mouth before I could stop it. Daniel. Not a question. Not an accusation. Just his name, hanging in the air between us like smoke, like something already burning that nobody wanted to admit was on fire. He crossed the room in 3 steps. That's how small our apartment was. That's how quickly he reached me. And for a single, breathless moment, I thought, maybe I'm misreading this. Maybe she's a colleague. A neighbor. Someone's sister. Maybe I'm about to feel very foolish standing here with these roses. He touched my elbow. Gently. The way you touch someone you're trying to calm down before they understand why they need calming. Nadia. His voice was low. Careful. Let me explain. That's when she turned around. She was beautiful in the way that hurts to look at directly, not dramatic, not overdone. Just quietly, effortlessly stunning. Dark eyes. Natural curls pulled loosely to one side. Maybe 24, 25. Young enough that I felt the difference in my chest like a physical thing. She looked at me with an expression I wasn't prepared for, not guilt, not panic. Recognition. She knew who I was. You must be Nadia, she said. Soft voice. Steady. Like she'd rehearsed this, or worse, like she hadn't needed to. My name in her mouth felt like a small theft. I'd been with Daniel for 6 years. We met at a rooftop party neither of us wanted to attend. He'd handed me a drink, said something terrible about the DJ, and I'd laughed so hard I spilled it. We built something from that, from laughter and late nights and grocery lists and arguments about whose turn it was to call the landlord. 6 years of ordinary, sacred hours. And somehow, in the space of that ordinary life, someone else had been let in. Given access to the inside of things. To the soft, private corners I thought only I knew. The roses were dripping now, condensation from the wrapping running down my wrist, cold against my skin. Daniel was still touching my elbow. She was still holding my wooden spoon. And nobody moved. Because the next person to speak was going to have to say something true. And I could see on both their faces. Neither of them was ready for that yet. Her name was Camille. Daniel said it like an apology, quiet, rushed, like if he moved past it quickly enough it wouldn't land. But it landed. It sank straight down through me and settled somewhere I couldn't reach. Camille. Even the name felt curated. Chosen by someone with taste. I set the roses down on the entryway table, not gently, not dramatically, just down, and walked into my own living room like I was the guest. That's what it felt like. Like I'd interrupted something with a pulse. Something breathing and alive that had been growing here in the warm, private hours I spent at the office believing I had a home to return to. How long? I asked. Daniel opened his mouth. Camille looked at the floor. That pause, that 3-second silence, told me everything the words eventually wouldn't. 7 months. He said it to the carpet. 7 months of Tuesday evenings and long lunches and whatever this was, domesticity, casual and quiet and heartbreakingly comfortable. 7 months of her bare feet on my hardwood floors. Of her learning which burner runs hot and which cabinet holds the good glasses. But here's the part that unraveled me completely, the part one wasn't prepared for, the part that kept me standing instead of leaving. Camille looked up. Directly at me. And her eyes weren't cold. They weren't triumphant. They were, and I hate that this is the only word that fits, sorry. Genuinely, painfully sorry. The kind of sorry that lives in someone's body, not just their expression. I didn't know about you, she said. Not at first. And I believed her. That was the problem. I looked at this woman, this stranger standing in the wreckage of my marriage, and I believed her. Something in her steadiness, her refusal to perform innocence, made her more credible than the man I'd shared a bed with for 6 years. Daniel shifted beside me. I could feel his anxiety radiating outward like heat, that particular restlessness he got when things moved beyond his control. I knew his body like a language I'd spent years learning. Every nervous habit. Every tell. Which is how I knew, in that moment, that he was more afraid of what Camille might say next than anything I might do. She took a slow breath. Opened her mouth. And Daniel said, "Don't." The word hung there between them like a held breath. Don't. Camille looked at Daniel for a long moment. Something passed between them, not affection, not the warm private language of two people in love. Something older and heavier than that. A negotiation. A history with locked rooms inside it. Then she looked back at me. And she told me anyway. He told me you two were separated. The room didn't spin. I've heard people describe moments like this as the world tilting off its axis, the floor disappearing. It wasn't like that. It was the opposite, everything became unbearably, cruelly still. The hum of the refrigerator. The slow bubble of whatever was simmering on the stove. Daniel's breathing, slightly too fast, just to my left. I turned to look at him. He didn't deny it. That silence was its own kind of violence. Something shifted in me then, not loudly, not dramatically. But I felt it. The quiet, cellular snapping of something that had been under tension for far too long. Not just tonight. Not just because of Camille. Months of half-conversations and early nights and the specific loneliness of lying next to someone who has already, in every way that matters, left, all of it converged into this single, crystalline moment. I picked up my bag. Daniel finally spoke. "Nadia, wait. Just, please." "I'm not leaving," I said quietly. "This is my apartment." I walked toward the kitchen. Past Camille, close enough that I caught the scent of my own perfume on her, Maison Margiela, the one in the white bottle, and something about that small intimacy, that borrowed detail, made my throat tighten in a way I refused to let become tears. I poured myself a glass of water. Stood at the counter. Breathed. Camille came and stood beside me. Not Daniel. Camille. She didn't touch me. She didn't speak immediately. She just stood there. Present. Solid. Like someone who understood that sometimes people don't need words, they just need another body nearby that isn't the source of the wound. After a long moment she said, barely above a whisper, "You deserve to know everything." I gripped the counter. Because the way she said it, low, careful, close, didn't feel like a confession about Daniel anymore. It felt like something else entirely. She said it so quietly I almost missed it. He wasn't just lying to me about you, Nadia. He was lying to both of us about someone else. The glass nearly slipped from my hand. I turned to look at her fully for the first time since I'd walked through that door. Really look, not with the eyes of a betrayed wife cataloging a threat, but with something rawer than that. Something that had no name yet. Camille wasn't looking away. She held my gaze with a steadiness that felt almost unfair, like she'd had time to prepare for this moment and had chosen, deliberately, to show up to it without armor. "What are you talking about?" I said. She reached into the pocket of Daniel's shirt, his shirt, on her body, in my kitchen, and placed her phone on the counter between us. Screen up. Already open. I looked down. Messages. A name I didn't recognize, Rena, and a thread that scrolled back further than 7 months. Further than Camille. A whole separate architecture of deception built quietly beneath everything I thought was real. My vision narrowed. Behind us, Daniel moved. I heard him take 2 steps and then stop, caught, I imagine, by the look on my face reflecting in the dark kitchen window. "Nadia. Don't." My own voice surprised me. Calm. Flat. Dangerous in its quietness. Camille picked her phone back up. And then she did something I still can't fully explain. She turned it over, face down, like she was protecting me from reading further. Like she understood instinctively that there was a line between what I needed to know and what would simply cause damage without purpose. That small gesture undid something in me. This woman, this stranger I'd wanted to hate from the moment I heard her laugh, was showing me more care in 30 seconds than my husband had shown me in months. We stood there in the amber kitchen light, close enough that I could see the slight tremble she was trying to hold back in her lower lip. She wasn't as composed as she appeared. She was holding herself together with the same invisible effort I was. 2 women standing in the rubble of the same lie, suddenly and inexplicably on the same side of it. "How long have you known?" I asked softly. "About Rena?" 3 days. Her voice cracked on the last word, just barely, just enough. "I came here tonight to end it." "I didn't expect," she exhaled. "I didn't expect you." Something about the way she said you moved through me like weather. Daniel started talking, filling the silence with explanation, with justification, with the particular verbal architecture of a man trying to rebuild a burning structure with his bare hands. I heard the sounds of it. I couldn't tell you a single word. Because Camille had turned slightly toward me, and in the narrow warm space between us, her hand had come to rest on the counter barely an inch from mine. Not touching. Just there. An offer. A question without language. A warmth radiating from that single inch of space that made the entire room feel like it was holding its breath. I looked down at her hand. Then up at her face. Her eyes were dark and searching and full of something that had absolutely nothing to do with Daniel anymore. And that was the moment everything stopped being about my husband that I moved my hand first. Not toward her. Not away. I turned it over, slowly, deliberately, palm facing up on the cold marble counter. An answer to the question she hadn't asked in words. Camille looked down at it. Then up at me. And for the first time since I'd walked through that door 2 hours ago, somebody in this apartment was completely honest without saying a single thing. Daniel saw it. I know because the room changed, that specific atmospheric shift when someone realizes they are no longer the most important person in a moment they created. He'd built this entire architecture of lies believing he was the gravitational center of both our worlds. He was wrong. Nadia. His voice had a new quality now, not guilt, not desperation. Something smaller than both. What are you doing? I turned to look at him then. Really look, with clear eyes, with the particular vision that arrives only after something inside you has finished breaking and started, quietly, to reorganize itself into something stronger. I'm figuring out what's actually real, I said. He flinched. Good. Camille exhaled slowly beside me, long, steady, like she'd been underwater and had finally found the surface. She didn't take my hand. Instead she straightened, turned fully toward Daniel, and said the thing that collapsed the last remaining wall in the room. I called Rena this morning. Before I came here. Her voice was quiet steel. She didn't know about me either. Or about Nadia. She paused. She's been with you for 2 years, Daniel. She thought she was your girlfriend. The silence that followed was total. 3 women. 1 man. An entire ecosystem of constructed intimacy built on nothing but his need to never be alone with himself. Daniel sat down on the couch, not dramatically, not strategically. He simply ran out of the ability to stand. And in that moment, with him finally, visibly small, something lifted. From my shoulders, from the room, from the careful way Camille and I had been breathing around each other all evening. She turned back to me. And for the first time, she smiled, soft, real, slightly broken at the edges in the way that only honest things are. I don't actually like this apartment, she said quietly. A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Sudden. Genuine. The kind that arrives through tears. Neither do I whispered. But then her expression shifted, just barely, just enough. Something flickered behind her eyes. Something that hadn't been said yet. Something that made my breath slow. She reached into her pocket again. A different pocket this time. A keychain. 2 keys. One I recognized as the apartment key Daniel had given her. The other one, I had never seen before. But she was looking at me like she expected me to recognize it. The key was to an apartment across the city. Camille's apartment. Her real one, the one Daniel had never been to, the one she'd kept carefully separate from whatever this had been. She'd held on to that boundary the way people hold on to the last honest thing they own. I thought I might need it tonight, she said softly. To leave and not come back. She wasn't offering it to me. Not exactly. She was just showing me that she had somewhere to go. That she was choosing to still be standing here. I understood the difference. And somehow, that understanding felt like the most intimate thing that had happened all evening. We called Rena together. Camille dialed, put it on speaker, and the 3 of us, 2 in the room, one a voice through a phone pressed to a kitchen counter, had the kind of conversation that women have when the carefully constructed illusions fall away and what's left is just the clean, cold truth. Rena cried. I cried. Camille didn't, but her hand found my shoulder somewhere in the middle of it and stayed there. Daniel left quietly around midnight. No grand exit. No final plea. He simply gathered his jacket and walked out the door like a man who finally understood he had nothing left to negotiate with. I didn't watch him go. The weeks that followed were strange and tender and nothing like I expected. Camille and I met for coffee 3 days later, neutral ground, a small place near the river she liked. We talked for 4 hours. About the relationship we'd both been in without fully knowing it. About who we were outside of it. About the odd, unasked-for gift of being truly seen by someone who had absolutely no reason to see you. She was funny. Quietly, sharply funny. She read the same kind of books I pretended I didn't cry at. She took her coffee the same way, too strong, no sugar, like a small daily act of stubbornness. I filed for divorce on a Thursday. Signed the papers at a table by a window with weak afternoon light and felt, beneath the grief, something that surprised me. Relief. Quiet and steady and entirely my own. I don't know exactly what Camille and I are building. I don't think either of us is rushing to name it. Some things are more honest before they have a label, more true in the space between words, in the long conversations that run past midnight, in the way she laughs at something I say and I feel, for the first time in years, genuinely, peacefully known. Sometimes the life you were supposed to find isn't the one you planned. Sometimes it's standing barefoot in your kitchen wearing someone else's shirt, holding keys to a door you haven't opened yet. Sometimes home isn't a place you return to. It's a person you weren't expecting.